The crystal spires of the Galactic Council chambers had stood silent for 3 millennia. Not a single war alarm had sounded. Not one species had raised weapons against another. Peace, true, absolute peace, had reigned across 17 star systems and 43 inhabited worlds, until today. High Counselor Zarathul of the Viridian Empire stood before the assembled delegates, her 6 arms trembling with barely contained rage. Her translucent skin pulsed with angry crimson patterns as she spoke. "They mock us," she hissed, her voice echoing through the vast chamber. "These humans, they dare to reject our authority. They claim no allegiance to the galactic peace accord. They say they never agreed to our terms." A ripple of shocked whispers spread through the assembled delegates. The Kethmori delegation clicked their mandibles in distress. The floating ethereal representatives dimmed their bioluminescent forms in concern. Council Speaker Mordun, a massive crystalline being whose body chimed softly with each movement, rose from his position at the center of the chamber. "High Counselor," Mordun's voice resonated like distant thunder. "Surely this is a misunderstanding. No species has challenged the Accord in 3,000 years. The humans are young. Perhaps they simply don't understand. They understand perfectly." Zarathul slammed one of her fists against the speaking podium, causing hairline cracks to spider across its surface. "I sent our finest diplomats to their homeworld. Do you know what they did?" The chamber fell silent. They laughed. The word hung in the air like a curse. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their various forms of seating. Zarathul activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The image showed a blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. Earth, as the humans called it. This insignificant rock harbors the most arrogant species we have ever encountered. They have no respect for order, no understanding of their place in the galaxy. They believe themselves special. Ambassador Crix of the Hive Collective, his insectoid features twitching with agitation, spoke up. What did they say, exactly? Zarathul's skin patterns shifted to a deeper shade of red. When presented with the terms of surrender and integration into our peaceful order, their leader, a creature named President Chen, said, and I quote, "Thanks for the offer, but we'll pass. We've got our own thing going on here." The chamber erupted in shocked chatter. Several smaller delegates fainted. The ethereals flickered rapidly in distress. Then, Zarathul continued, her voice rising, when our diplomats explained the consequences of defying the Galactic Peace Accord, the humans began making jokes. Council Speaker Mordun's crystalline form rang with a low, ominous tone. "Jokes?" They said. Zarathul paused as if the words physically pained her to repeat. "They said we looked like angry Christmas trees having a bad day. They asked if we needed a hug." The silence that followed was deafening. 3,000 years, Zarathul whispered. 3,000 years of perfect harmony, ended by a species that finds our sacred authority amusing. She straightened to her full height, all 6 arms spreading wide in a gesture of declaration. "I call for immediate military action. The humans have broken the peace. They must be brought to heel before their rebellion spreads to other worlds." Council, Speaker Mordun's form dimmed. "High Counselor, we must consider." "There is nothing to consider." Zarathul's voice cracked like a whip. "For 3 millennia, we have maintained order through strength. Every species knows their place. Every world follows our guidance. We cannot allow one upstart civilization to destroy everything we have built." In the far corner of the chamber, a small delegation sat quietly. They were the Zeph, ancient beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Their leader, Elder Nyx, had not spoken in council for over 200 years. Now she stood. Her voice was soft, but it carried across the chamber with surprising clarity. "I have seen this before. Every eye, sensor, and optical organ in the Yi chamber focused on her. Many times," she continued, "a young species emerges. They are different. They do not fit the established order. The older civilizations demand compliance." She paused, her ancient eyes reflecting depths of memory. "It never ends well. Not for anyone. Zarathul's skin patterns flashed with irritation. Elder Nix, with all due respect, this situation is unprecedented. No species has ever been so brazenly disrespectful. That is where you are wrong, Elder Nix interrupted gently. I remember the Draconian Wars, the Silicon Uprising, the Great Rebellion of the Inner Worlds. Each time it began the same way. An established order, a newcomer who didn't understand their place, violence to enforce compliance. And how did those conflicts end? Council Speaker Morden asked. Elder Nix smiled sadly. Badly, for everyone. But Zarathul was beyond reason now. The humiliation of being laughed at by a species she considered inferior had triggered something primal in her warrior instincts. Don't care about ancient history, she declared. I care about order, about respect, about ensuring that every species in this galaxy understands that the Galactic Peace Accord is not optional. She turned to address the full assembly. I invoke Article 7 of the Galactic Charter. A state of rebellion exists. Military action is authorized to restore order to the galaxy. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone expected. But fear won over wisdom. The older species, comfortable in their long peace, could not imagine a universe where their authority was questioned. The motion passed. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, already planning their contribution to the military action, Elder Nix remained seated. She closed her ancient eyes and sighed. Foolish children, she whispered to herself. You have no idea what you've just awakened. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Sarah Chen was finishing her morning coffee when her aide rushed into the Oval Office. Madam, President, the young man said breathlessly. You need to see this. The aliens, they're back on the line. Chen set down her mug and straightened her jacket. Let me guess. They didn't appreciate our diplomatic response? The aide's expression was somewhere between terror and disbelief. They've declared war, ma'am. President Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she began to chuckle. Ma'am? The aide asked, confused. Tom, she said, still smiling, get me the Joint Chiefs on a secure line, and call the UN Security Council. Looks like we're about to have some visitors. She walked to the window and looked up at the clear blue sky. Somewhere up there, an ancient galactic empire was mobilizing for war against humanity. Well, she said quietly, this should be interesting. What none of them knew, neither the Galactic Council nor humanity, was that this war would change everything. The comfortable order of 3,000 years was about to be shattered forever, and it would all start with humanity doing what they did best, being themselves. 6 months later, the largest military force in galactic history hung in the void beyond Earth's moon. 3,000 ships from 43 worlds, representing the combined might of civilizations that had perfected warfare over millions of years. Admiral Kossatar of the Hegemony Navy stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Order, studying tactical displays that showed Earth rotating peacefully below. His cybernetic implants processed data streams from hundreds of sources simultaneously. Status report, he commanded. Commander Vex Ori, a four-armed Kethmori warrior, stepped forward. All fleets are in position, Admiral. The human defensive satellites have been catalogued. Primitive nuclear weapons, basic kinetic projectiles. Their largest vessels appear to be cargo ships. Kostar's metallic face showed no expression. No warships? None that our sensors can identify, sir. Intelligence suggests they've converted some civilian vessels, but their technology appears to be centuries behind our oldest allies. The Admiral studied the data. After 3,000 years of peace, this was the first real military operation any of them had conducted. But their technology was overwhelming. Plasma cannons that could crack moons, shield generators that could deflect stellar radiation, FTL drives that could relocate entire fleets in minutes. Against this, humanity had, what? Metal tubes that threw explosive projectiles? Admiral, Communications Officer Ralveth announced, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it through. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a middle-aged human woman in a simple blue suit sitting behind a wooden desk. President Chen looked directly into the camera with calm, steady eyes. Hello? she said pleasantly. I assume you're the folks who declared war on us 6 months ago. I'm Sarah Chen, President of the United States and current Speaker for the United Nations Security Council. Around the bridge, officers exchanged glances. The human seemed remarkably relaxed for someone facing annihilation. We got your ultimatum, Chen continued. Very formal, lots of big words. My speechwriters were impressed by the linguistic complexity, though they did note some grammatical inconsistencies in the translation matrix. Admiral Kostar felt his tactical processors stutter. She was critiquing their grammar? Now, I'm required to give you one last chance to reconsider, Chen said. You've brought quite a fleet. Very impressive. Must have cost a fortune in fuel alone. But I have to ask, are you sure you want to do this? Commander Vexori leaned toward the Admiral. Is she trying to negotiate? President Chen seemed to hear him. Oh no, Commander Vexori, isn't it? I read your file. Very impressive military record. No, I'm not trying to negotiate, I'm just being polite. We humans have a saying. It's always good to give someone a chance to change their mind before they do something really stupid. The bridge fell silent. The human had just called the largest military force in galactic history really stupid. Admiral Kostar activated his comm. President Chen, I am Admiral Kostar of the Galactic Hegemony. You are addressing the combined might of 43 worlds. Our technology is millennia beyond yours. Your defeat is inevitable. Surrender now, and your species will be granted the mercy of assimilation into our peaceful order. Chen nodded thoughtfully. I appreciate the offer, Admiral, I really do. But we're going to have to decline. Then you choose extinction. Actually, Chen said, her smile widening, we choose something else entirely. Before Kostar could respond, his tactical officer called out an alarm. Admiral, energy signatures are spiking across the human fleet. On the view screen, President Chen was checking her watch. Right on schedule. Admiral, you might want to look outside. The bridge crew turned to the main viewports. Earth's small collection of hastily converted civilian ships was still there, but something was wrong. Space around them was shifting. Admiral, the sensor officer's voice was tight with confusion. I'm reading massive gravitational anomalies. The humans, they're doing something to space-time itself. That's impossible, Commander Vexori stated. They don't have that technology. Actually, President Chen said pleasantly, we don't. But our friends do. The stars began to change. Where empty space had been moments before, new ships materialized. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. Ships unlike anything in the galactic database. Sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around them. Massive constructs that looked more grown than built. Geometric forms that hurt to look at directly. Admiral Kostar's processors were overloading, trying to analyze what he was seeing. Admiral, his communications officer whispered, I'm detecting 23. Wait, 47. Different species in that fleet. Unknown configurations, unknown technology signatures. How is this possible? Kostar demanded. President Chen's image on the screen tilted her head sympathetically. Well, Admiral, it turns out that when you spend 3,000 years enforcing peace through military might, you make a lot of enemies. Some species fled to the outer rim rather than submit. Others went into hiding. A few even left the galaxy entirely. She paused. They've been waiting for someone to finally stand up to you. When word got out that little old Earth had told the mighty Galactic Council to take a hike, well, let's just say we got some interesting phone calls. One of the new ships, a vessel that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight, moved toward the Galactic Fleet. As it approached, Admiral Kostar's sensors finally identified it. Impossible, he breathed. That's a Draconian dreadnought. The Draconians were wiped out 2 millennia ago. Wiped out, exiled, fled, conquered, assimilated. President Chen listed casually. Amazing how many of your peacefully integrated species were just waiting for the right moment to come home. The tactical display was chaos. Hundreds of new signatures were appearing by the minute. Ships emerging from hyperspace, decloaking. rising from the surfaces of asteroids where they'd been hidden for centuries. "This changes nothing," Admiral Kostar declared, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Our technology is still superior. Our fleet is larger." "Admiral," his tactical officer interrupted. "Sir, I'm reading approximately 15,000 vessels in the combined Human Alliance fleet. And sir, some of these energy signatures, they're off our measurement scale." President Chen leaned back in her chair. "Did I mention that the Xenorians joined us? You remember the Xenorians, don't you? The ones you peacefully relocated when you wanted their homeworld for a vacation resort? Turns out they've spent the last 800 years working on some very interesting weapons. Something about wanting to pay you back for destroying their entire civilization." A new voice crackled across the communications channel. It spoke, in perfect galactic standard, but with an accent that hadn't been heard in 8 centuries. "Greetings, Galactic Council Fleet. This is High Commander Zurak of the Free Xenorian Republic. We've been waiting a very long time for this conversation." Admiral Kossatar felt something he hadn't experienced in his centuries of existence. Fear. The largest military force in galactic history was now outnumbered 5-1 by ships full of species with very long memories and very old grudges. "Admiral," Commander Vexori said quietly, "perhaps we should consider a strategic withdrawal." "No," Kostar snapped. "We represent order. We represent peace. We cannot be seen to retreat from primitives and outcasts." President Chen sighed audibly. "Admiral, I'm going to give you one more chance. You can leave now, with honor and dignity, and we can pretend this whole thing was a misunderstanding. Or," she gestured vaguely toward the viewports where the Allied fleet was still growing, "or you can find out what 3,000 years of anger looks like when it finally gets a chance to express itself." Admiral Kossatar's pride warred with his tactical training. His pride won. "All ships," he commanded. "Battle stations. Target the human vessels first. Once they're destroyed, their alliance will crumble." As klaxons began to wail across 3,000 Galactic Council ships, President Chen shook her head sadly. "You know, Admiral, we really hoped you'd choose the smart option." She looked directly into the camera. "But if there's one thing humans have learned over the centuries, it's this. Sometimes the only way to end a bully's reign is to punch them in the nose." She smiled. "Consider this our punch." The screen went dark just as the first shots were fired, beginning the war that would end 3,000 years of imposed peace and change the galaxy forever. But Admiral Kossatar was about to learn something that would have saved him if he'd bothered to study human history more carefully. When humanity went to war, they didn't just fight. They made friends, and their new friends had very, very long memories. The first exchange of fire lasted exactly 17 minutes. Admiral Kostar's fleet opened with a coordinated barrage that should have vaporized the human vessels in the opening seconds. Plasma bolts that could melt asteroids lanced through space toward the small Earth ships. They never made contact. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported in a voice tight with disbelief, "our weapons are being redirected." On the main display, the plasma bolts curved away from their targets as if guided by invisible hands. Some dissipated harmlessly into space. Others formed perfect spirals that looked almost decorative. "How?" Commander Vexori demanded. The answer came from one of the new ships in the Allied fleet, a massive vessel that seemed to be built from living metal. Its hull rippled like water as it moved. "Greetings, Council forces." A musical voice transmitted across all frequencies. "This is harmony singer Veltar of the Symphonic Collective. Your weapons create such beautiful energy patterns. We've simply conducted them into something more artistic." Admiral Kossatar stared at the tactical display. The Symphonic Collective had been peacefully relocated from their homeworld 1,500 years ago when the Council decided their planet was needed for industrial purposes. They were supposed to be a primitive species with no understanding of advanced technology. Apparently, exile had taught them a few things. "All ships," Kostar commanded, "recalibrate weapons to bypass harmonic interference. Maximum power." The second barrage was twice as intense. Energy beams that could crack a planet's crust streaked toward the human-led alliance. This time, they were met by something even more impossible. Ships that shouldn't exist began to move in ways that violated every law of physics. A draconian dreadnought folded space around itself, appearing directly behind 3 council vessels and disabling them with weapons that fired pure darkness. A Xenorian battlecruiser phased through solid matter, its hull becoming translucent, as it passed harmlessly through a council ship's shields and emerged on the other side. "Report!" Admiral Kossatar barked. "Sir," his tactical officer was sweating despite his cybernetic cooling systems. "The enemy is using technology we don't understand. Spatial manipulation, phase shifting, something that appears to be weaponized. Gravity. And the humans?" "The humans are... Sir, you need to see this." The main display shifted to show one of Earth's converted cargo ships. It was flying directly toward a council battlecruiser, weapons ports open. As they watched, the human vessel fired. What emerged from its weapons wasn't energy or projectiles. It was a transmission. "Unknown council vessel," a cheerful human voice crackled across the comm. "This is Captain Maria Santos of the UES. Have a nice day. I notice you're trying to kill us. That's not very neighborly." The council battlecruiser fired its main guns point blank at the approaching human ship. The beams struck and were absorbed by the ship's hull, which began to glow with a soft, warm light. "Thanks for the energy boost," Captain Santos continued. "Our Xenorian friends hooked us up with some really neat defensive systems. Turns out being angry for 800 years really motivates the research and development department." The human ship accelerated directly toward the council vessel. "Now, I've got a choice for you," Santos said conversationally. "Option 1. You can surrender and we'll beam you some coffee and donuts while we figure out what to do with you. Option 2. You can keep trying to kill us, and I'll have to turn your ship into a tourist attraction." The council ship's response was to launch a full spread of antimatter torpedoes. The human ship caught them, not with shields or defensive systems. The ship literally extended mechanical arms and plucked the torpedoes out of space like someone picking apples. Option 2, it is, Captain Santos sighed. What happened next would be debated by military historians for centuries. The human ship somehow convinced the council vessel's own computer systems to play practical jokes on its crew. Artificial gravity fluctuated to create impromptu dance parties. The life support systems began emitting giggling sounds. The main computer started telling jokes in 17 different languages. "Attention, council crew," the ship's computer announced in a cheerful voice. "This is your captain speaking. Just kidding. This is actually your new human friend, Captain Santos. I've taken the liberty of redecorating your ship. Check out your main view screen." The council vessel's display now showed a cartoon image of Earth with arms and legs, waving cheerfully. Below it, text scrolled, "Welcome to the human experience. Please keep your arms and tentacles inside the ride at all times." Admiral Kossatar watched in growing horror as similar scenes played out across the battlefield. His mighty fleet, the terror of the galaxy, was being systematically humiliated by an alliance of outcasts and refugees, led by a species that turned warfare into comedy. But worse was yet to come. "Admiral," his communications officer announced, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the council chambers." The main screen shifted to show the familiar crystal spires, but something was wrong. The chambers were in chaos. Delegates were running in panic, and several of the crystal formations were cracked. High Counselor Zarathul appeared on screen, her 6 arms flailing wildly. Her translucent skin was now flashing rapidly between colors in a pattern that indicated extreme distress. "Admiral," she shrieked, "you must return immediately. The homeworlds are under attack." "Impossible," Kostar replied. "All our intelligence indicated the humans had no FTL capability beyond basic jump drives." "Not the humans." Zarathul's voice reached a pitch that made several bridge officers wince. "The others. Species we thought were extinct. Ships we've never seen. They're hitting military installations, government facilities. Admiral, they're broadcasting something on all frequencies." She paused the transmission and activated another feed. A figure appeared on screen. Tall, elegant, with features that seemed to shift between different species. When it spoke, Its voice carried harmonics that resonated with something deep in the listener's mind. "People of the galaxy," the figure said calmly, "I am Echo Walker of the Many as One. For 3,000 years the Council has told you that their way was the only path to peace. They have presented you with order and called it harmony. They have given you compliance and called it contentment." The figure paused. "Today a young species called humanity has shown us another way. They have demonstrated that peace does not require subjugation, that order does not demand the sacrifice of identity, that there are alternatives to the path we have all walked for so long." Admiral Kostar felt his tactical systems overloading as more data flooded in. Rebellion wasn't spreading to one or two worlds. It was everywhere. Dozens of species, supposedly, content with Council rule, were rising up simultaneously. "The humans did this," he whispered. "They started this." "Actually," a new voice said, "we just gave everyone permission to stop pretending they were happy." Admiral Kostar spun toward the source of the voice. Standing on his bridge, somehow having materialized from nowhere, was a human female in a simple military uniform. She was young, perhaps in her 30s, with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold depths of amusement. "How did you?" Kostar began. "Oh, that," the human said casually. "Teleportation technology. The ethereals taught it to us about 3 hours ago. Turns out when you're not busy oppressing people, they're remarkably willing to share their secrets." She looked around the bridge with interest. "Nice ship. Very intimidating." "I bet it was. Really effective for bullying single planets into submission." "I am Admiral Kostar of the Galactic Hegemony," he declared, drawing himself up to his full height. "You will surrender immediately or—" "Or what?" the human asked pleasantly. "You'll destroy Earth? Kind of hard to do that when your weapons keep turning into fireworks displays. You'll call for reinforcements? From where?" "According to our intelligence, about 60% of your member worlds are currently in the process of declaring independence." She walked to the main view screen and studied the tactical display. "You know what your real problem is, Admiral? You forgot something very important about peace." "And what is that?" The human smiled. "Real peace doesn't need to be enforced with guns." Around them, alarms began to sound. The tactical display showed Council ships throughout the fleet powering down their weapons and transmitting surrender codes. "It's over, Admiral," the human said gently. "Your crews are smart enough to see which way the wind is blowing. They don't want to die for a system that's already collapsing." Admiral Kostar looked at the display. His mighty fleet was falling apart. Ships were defecting by the dozen. Others were simply withdrawing from the battle zone. In the distance, Earth hung serenely in space, completely unharmed. "This is impossible," he said quietly. "We maintained order for 3,000 years. We brought peace to the galaxy." "You brought compliance," the human corrected. "There's a difference. And the thing about compliance is it only lasts as long as people are afraid to say no." She gestured toward the view screen. Today, humanity said no. And suddenly, everyone remembered they had that option. Admiral Kostar sank into his command chair. "What happens now?" The human considered the question. "Well, that's up to all of us, isn't it? For the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy gets to decide its own future. No more Council dictating terms, no more enforced peace, just people figuring out how to get along." She paused. "It's going to be messy, it's going to be complicated. There will be arguments and disagreements and probably a few more wars, but you know what?" "What?" "It'll be honest. And in my experience, honest chaos is a lot healthier than imposed order." As if to emphasize her point, Captain Santos's voice crackled over the comm from her cargo ship. "Admiral Kostar, this is Captain Santos. I wanted to thank you for a very entertaining afternoon. Your ship's computer systems have a wonderful sense of humor now. I think you'll find the crew facilities have been upgraded with some creature comforts." Admiral Kostar looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their consoles in bewilderment. The standard military gray walls had been replaced with cheerful blues and greens. Soft music was playing from the air vents, and his tactical display now included small encouraging messages like, "You're doing great," and "Remember to stay hydrated." Despite everything, Despite the collapse of 3,000 years of galactic order, despite the complete failure of his mission, Admiral Kostar began to laugh. It started as a quiet chuckle, then grew into full-bodied laughter that echoed through the bridge. His officers stared at him in alarm, but he couldn't stop. The human on his bridge smiled. "There you go. I was wondering when someone from your side would figure it out." "Figure out what?" Kostar asked between laughs. "That this is all pretty ridiculous when you think about it. A galaxy-spanning empire brought down by a species that thinks warfare should include snack breaks." Admiral Kostar wiped tears from his eyes. "What are you people?" "We're human," she said simply. "We're stubborn. We're optimistic. We're absolutely terrible at following orders, and we have a really hard time taking things too seriously." She looked out at the stars, and apparently that was exactly what the galaxy needed. As Admiral Kostar's flagship powered down its weapons and transmitted its surrender across the galaxy, 3,000 years of imposed peace came to an end. But something else was beginning. Something messier, more chaotic, and infinitely more hopeful. The galaxy was about to learn what freedom looked like, and humanity was going to teach them how to laugh while they figured it out. 1 year later, the former Galactic Council chambers had been transformed beyond recognition. Where once crystal spires had enforced rigid hierarchy, now a sprawling complex of interconnected buildings housed something unprecedented. The first, truly democratic galactic assembly in recorded history. President Sarah Chen walked through the main assembly hall, marveling at the scene. Delegates from over 200 species filled the space. Not the 43 carefully controlled worlds of the old council, but representatives from every inhabited system that wanted a voice in their collective future. It was, to put it mildly, chaos. In one corner, a heated debate raged between the Kethmori Collective and the Silicon Synthesis about trade route regulations. The Kethmori were clicking their mandibles aggressively while the Silicon beings flashed angry geometric patterns. Neither side was threatening war. They were just having a very animated discussion about shipping schedules. Near the center of the hall, a group of former council species was working with newly liberated worlds to establish an interspecies cultural exchange program. The proposal had generated 300 pages of documentation and would probably take another 6 months to finalize, but that was okay. They had time. "Madam President," a familiar voice called out. Chen turned to see Admiral Kostar approaching, though he looked remarkably different from the imposing military figure she'd faced a year ago. He'd traded his intimidating uniform for simple civilian clothes, and his cybernetic implants had been modified to include what appeared to be a smile enhancement protocol. "Admiral," she greeted him warmly. "Though I suppose it's Director Kostar now, isn't it?" He nodded. "Director of Interspecies Conflict Resolution. I never imagined I'd be mediating trade disputes and territorial disagreements instead of commanding fleets. How do you like it?" Kostar paused thoughtfully. "It's frustrating, complicated. Nothing ever gets decided quickly. Every species has different needs, different perspectives, different ways of communicating." He smiled, an expression that looked strange on his metallic features but somehow worked. "I love it," Chen laughed. "I'm glad to hear it. Any major crises I should know about?" "Well," Kostar said, consulting a datapad, "the Zenorian Republic and the Draconian Sovereignty are having a dispute about mining rights in the Outer Nebula. The Ethereals want to establish a preserve for space whales, and the Symphonic Collective has filed a formal complaint about the quantum engineers' new propulsion systems being harmonically disruptive." "Sounds about right," Chen said. "Any of them threatening to go to war?" "Oh no." Kostar shook his head. "The Zenorians said they'll settle for a strongly worded letter and exclusive naming rights to 3 asteroids. The Draconians offered to share mining proceeds if they can call the operation Dragon's Horde Mining Consortium. The Ethereals got their preserve, and the Symphonic Collective is working with the quantum engineers to make their engines produce musical harmonics during activation." Chen nodded approvingly. Democracy in action. A commotion near the main entrance caught their attention. A group of humans was entering the hall, led by Captain Maria Santos, now Admiral Santos of the newly formed Galactic Defense Cooperative. Behind her walked a collection of beings that would have been impossible to see in the same room during the old Council era. There was harmony singer Veltar of the Symphonic Collective, his metallic form chiming softly as he moved. Echo Walker of the Many as One floated beside a draconian engineer whose scales shifted color with emotion. A group of young ethereals flickered excitedly as they discussed something with a Xenorian physicist. The next generation, Chen observed. Indeed, Kostar agreed. Species that couldn't even communicate during the old order are now collaborating on joint research projects. Did you know the ethereals and the draconians are working together on a new form of sustainable energy? And the Xenorians? They've designed a galaxy-wide communication network that operates on pure mathematics. No language barriers, no cultural misunderstandings, just pure information exchange. Admiral Santos spotted them and approached with her usual grin. Madam President Director, you two look like you're planning something dangerous. Just admiring. The controlled chaos, Chen replied. How's the new fleet shaping up? Beautifully, Santos said. We've got ships from 60 different species all working together. The Draconians handle heavy assault. The Ethereals manage reconnaissance. The Symphonic Collective coordinates communications. And the humans. What do humans do? Santos's grin widened. We keep everyone entertained. Turns out morale is really important when you're trying to maintain galactic security without oppressing anyone. Any trouble? Nothing major. A few pirate groups testing our response times. Some territorial disputes in the Outer Rim. But here's the interesting thing. Most conflicts are resolving themselves before we even arrive. Chen raised an eyebrow. How so? Word has spread about our unconventional methods, Santos explained. Last week, a pirate fleet attacked a trade convoy. By the time we arrived, the convoy crews and the pirates were sharing stories over dinner. Turns out the pirates were just a bunch of refugees whose homeworld had been destroyed, and the traders were looking for crew members. So the pirates joined the convoy? Better than that. The convoy hired them as security escorts. Now they're running protection services for the entire trade route. Director Kossitar shook his head in amazement. This would never have been